I walked into the meeting room, expecting to finalize the biggest deal of my career, a $6.5 million proposal I had spent months building from scratch. But when the presentation slides came up, my name was missing. Not a mention. My team had scrubbed me out like I never existed. I sat in silence, burning inside, while they took credit for my work. Then, just as the client leaned forward to shake hands and seal the deal, he said, "Wait. Where's the woman who actually built this? I'm not signing anything until I speak to her." For the past 8 years, I had given my all to the company. I joined as a mid-level strategist, but over time, I became the go-to person for large-scale client acquisitions. I wasn't flashy, and I didn't make noise in meetings like some of my colleagues did. But I delivered results. Every quarter, I either exceeded our targets or came extremely close. When the $6.5 million proposal came into our pipeline, I knew it was my shot to prove, once and for all, that I wasn't just dependable, I was indispensable. The project came from one of the biggest logistics firms in the country. They were expanding their infrastructure and wanted an all-in-one solution for procurement, operational integration, and compliance. It was a huge ask. I took the lead immediately, without being officially appointed. I had already developed a good relationship with the client over the past 2 years through smaller projects, and I knew their pain points inside out. Every night for weeks, I stayed up late going through market trends, financial projections, and tailoring the language in our pitch. By the time I completed the first draft of the proposal, it was 138 pages of customized brilliance. I submitted it to my department head and copied in 3 of my teammates, Marcus, Fiona, and Danielle. We were supposed to polish it together and send it to legal for review. But then something strange started happening. I noticed meetings being held without me. I was suddenly not being looped into updates about the client. I'd walk past glass conference rooms and see the team inside, going over my slides, my data, my ideas, without me. I approached Marcus one afternoon and asked if there was a reason I was being excluded. He blinked twice, looked down at his phone, and muttered, "Nothing personal. Management just wants to explore different voices." That didn't sit right. I checked the shared folder where the latest version of the proposal was kept. My name, my role, and all references to my contributions had been removed. The authors section now credited Marcus and Fiona. At first, I thought it was an oversight. So I scheduled a meeting with my manager, Tom. I calmly explained that I had led the initial development of the proposal, had the strongest relationship with the client, and wanted to know why I was being sidelined. He leaned back in his chair, sighed, and said, "Look, you're incredibly talented. But we need fresh energy and leadership in the front. Clients like seeing dynamic teams." I knew what he meant. I wasn't flashy. I wasn't loud. I didn't play the political game. But this proposal wasn't about theatrics, it was about trust, strategy, and execution. And I had been the one to earn the client's trust over 2 long years. Still, I bit my tongue. I wasn't going to make a scene. A week later, we had the internal dry run, the meeting where the full team rehearses the pitch before sending it to the client. I walked into the room and saw a neatly printed agenda. My name was nowhere. I was listed as support staff. I sat through the presentation in silence, listening as Marcus stumbled through the strategy portion I had built, as Fiona misinterpreted key data trends I had explained weeks earlier. Tom nodded and smiled, giving fake encouragements like, "Good energy, we'll polish it." Not once did he acknowledge my presence. That evening, I went home and reread every email I had exchanged with the client. I had been their point of contact from day one. I'd handled their initial concerns, helped them navigate budget limitations, and kept the relationship warm through 2 reorganizations. I was the reason they had invited us to bid on the $6.5 million project in the first place. But in my company's internal world, I had been erased. When the team submitted the final proposal, I noticed it had been stripped of several key components. The compliance section was weak. The financial forecasting was overly optimistic. They had removed the customized sections I had written, replacing them with generic boilerplate that lacked substance. I said nothing. A few days later, the company organized a celebratory lunch. The team believed they had nailed the proposal and were confident of winning the contract. I attended, sitting quietly at the far end of the table while Marcus toasted to teamwork and vision. Tom grinned, holding a glass of wine, saying, "This is the kind of synergy we need moving forward." 2 days after that, the client requested a follow-up meeting. Marcus and Fiona were buzzing, already assigning talking points for the call. The meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. At 9:45, the assistant forwarded an email to the team. "Please ensure my name is present for the meeting. We have a few specific questions only they can answer." The room fell silent. Tom, Marcus, and Fiona stared at one another. Marcus mumbled, "I thought we agreed to keep her off the front line." Tom replied, "Apparently the client didn't." At 9:58 a.m., I walked into the room. Tom gave me a forced smile and gestured for me to sit. The video call connected. The client's head of operations appeared, flanked by their procurement lead and general counsel. "Hi everyone," the client's rep said. "Before we begin, we'd just like to clarify something. The proposal references strategies we discussed directly with my name. We didn't see her name on the official document. Was that an error?" Tom stammered. Marcus shifted in his seat. The client rep continued, "Because frankly, if she's not involved, we're not sure this is going to work." I sat up straighter, trying to remain professional despite the pounding in my chest. I responded, "I'm happy to clarify any of those sections for you. And if it helps, I can walk you through the full compliance structure I originally developed." The call went on for an hour. I answered every question with precision. I even flagged an error in one of the financial assumptions that Marcus had botched. The client seemed visibly relieved. By the end of the meeting, their rep said, "Thanks, my name. We feel more confident now. We'll be in touch soon." As soon as the call ended, Tom looked at me and said, "Great job. We'll circle back with you." But I could already tell, the power dynamic had shifted. They thought they could erase me, ride my work to the finish line, and pretend I didn't matter. But now, the client had made it very clear, I was the reason they were even considering us. And suddenly, I wasn't invisible anymore. The tension was unmistakable the moment I stepped back into the office after my unexpected call from the client. The usual buzz of keyboards and quiet conversation seemed muffled, like the entire floor was holding its breath. I walked past my colleagues, many of whom offered awkward glances or outright looked away. But I wasn't here for them, I had a meeting to attend. That morning, I'd received a direct call from our biggest client, Jeremy Clark, CEO of Stratus Med Solutions. He wasn't just a client, he was the client, the one whose $6.5 million project proposal my team had spent 4 relentless months perfecting. Except now, my name wasn't even on the final version. And Jeremy had noticed. "Why wasn't your name on the cover?" he asked, sharp and to the point. "You were the only person I trusted with this. We signed on because of your pitch, your research." I didn't answer right away. Instead, I listened. "We want to move forward," he continued, "but only if you're leading the project." That call changed everything. The moment I hung up, I felt the same surge of fire I had when I first realized my name had been erased. But this time, I wasn't angry, I was focused. Now, As I stepped into the glass-walled conference room where the internal project team was gathered, I could see their faces: Ava, the project manager who had pushed my contributions aside; Neil, the junior analyst who had taken credit for my research; and of course, Martin, the department head who had given the green light to send the final proposal without even consulting me. Their faces were tight with confusion and tension. They weren't expecting me. "Hope you don't mind," I said, placing a folder on the table. "Client's request." He wanted me here. Martin looked caught off guard. We weren't informed you'd be joining." "You weren't informed because the client called me directly," I interrupted. "He asked some interesting questions." Ava shifted uncomfortably. "We were going to loop you back in. After I'd been conveniently deleted from the most critical project we've had this quarter?" I asked. My voice remained calm, but the steel underneath it was undeniable. Jeremy's email had come in just an hour earlier, and I'd printed it out. I slid it across the table toward Martin. The subject line read, "Project Lead Clarification, Non-Negotiable." As Martin skimmed the message, I could see the color drain from his face. The message was explicit: if I wasn't named as the lead and primary contact, Stratus Med would pull out of the deal. Ava leaned forward, reading over his shoulder. "He said that?" "Word for word," I confirmed. Neil spoke up finally, trying to backtrack. "This was just an oversight. We never intended to." "You didn't intend to give credit where it was due," I cut in. "You didn't just remove my name, you presented my strategy, my data, and my financial model as if it were yours. You all did." There was silence. Martin cleared his throat, trying to regain composure. "Look, we can fix this. We'll reissue the document and credit you properly. Let's just move forward." I almost laughed. "You think I'm here for a line on a PDF?" Martin blinked. "What do you want, then?" I paused. "For the first time, I want accountability. I want this team to admit what it did. Not just to me, but to leadership. And more importantly, to the client who trusted me." "You'd really throw your own team under the bus?" Ava hissed. I turned to her. "You threw me under the bus the moment you decided I wasn't needed anymore." I walked over to the screen at the end of the room and plugged in my USB. A presentation loaded, the original roadmap I'd designed, with date stamps, email trails, and version history. I had receipts for everything. Contributions, revisions, approvals, proof that the project's core had been mine from the start. Martin raised his hand, exasperated. "All right, we get it." "No, I don't think you do," I replied. "Because while you were busy stripping me out of the project, I was documenting every single move." Ava looked rattled now. "What are you going to do with it?" I looked around the room. "This isn't about revenge. This is about respect. And since none of you were willing to give it to me privately, I'm going to ensure it's restored publicly." Martin scoffed. "You really think going above us will help you here?" I smiled. "It's not about helping me. It's about helping the company not lose a $6.5 million contract." Right then, a knock came at the glass door. The door opened. It was Deborah, the VP of Client Relations. "Hi," she said. "Just got off the phone with Jeremy. He says the only reason he's still considering this partnership is because of one person in this room." Her eyes locked on mine. "Let's talk. Privately." I turned and followed her out, leaving my so-called team stunned behind me. Outside, Deborah looked at me seriously. "He said you saved that proposal. And that he won't sign unless you're leading the project directly, under your own title." I nodded. She continued, is everything he said true? About them removing your name? I gave a single nod. Every word. And I have proof. Deborah nodded slowly, then smiled. Good. Because we're not losing Stratus Med. I'll take it to the executive board myself. That moment felt like exhaling after holding my breath for weeks. Not just validation, but justice. Back in the office, word spread fast. I didn't need to confront anyone else. The team now knew that the tables had turned. The client had spoken, and no board in their right mind would ignore a $6.5 million ultimatum. When Deborah and I stepped out of the boardroom, the hallway felt quieter than usual, like the air itself was waiting to see what came next. I could still hear the hum of the office, but for me, it felt like everything had narrowed into clarity. I had the leverage now. But leverage only works when it's used wisely. Deborah walked me directly to her office, a corner room overlooking the city. She motioned for me to sit. We need to discuss what happens next, she said. I've spoken to the COO and forwarded the client's demand. There's no gray area here, he wants you as lead, period. And frankly, after what you showed me, I understand why. I exhaled slowly, absorbing what she said. Part of me still couldn't believe I had to fight this hard just to reclaim something I never should have lost. Deborah continued, I've worked with Jeremy before. He doesn't bluff. If he says he'll walk, he will. And a $6.5 million project isn't something the company can afford to lose. Especially not because a few team members got political. She didn't need to say more. We both understood what had happened. So what happens to them? I asked. That's up to senior leadership, she replied. But I can tell you this, you'll be reinstated as project lead, reporting directly to me. Your promotion is effective immediately. We'll be issuing an internal statement and informing Stratus Med formally by end of day. It felt surreal. I nodded slowly, absorbing her words. Deborah stood. One last thing, when the statement goes out, do you want your name back on the official proposal document? I looked at her. No. She blinked. No? I want it replaced entirely, I said. Not just edited. I want to issue a new version of the proposal, written from my original draft, with my name as the sole lead and contact. The current one doesn't reflect reality. Deborah smiled. I'll make sure it happens. As I left her office, the hallway felt different now. People were watching, but not with amusement or dismissal like before. This time, it was something closer to respect, or maybe fear. My so-called teammates knew the tide had turned, and now they were drifting helplessly in it. Back at my desk, I began going through the files I had saved and secured throughout the project, the original research models, data architecture, client notes, the customized pricing tiers I had created myself. I knew I had everything I needed to rebuild the proposal the way it was always meant to be. That night, I worked late. I stayed long after most had left. I wasn't rebuilding the proposal for them. I was doing it for myself, for the version of me that had been erased and replaced. I owed her this. Over the next few days, things moved quickly. The updated proposal, carrying only my name, was submitted to Stratus Med. Jeremy called to personally congratulate me on the correction and even hinted at expanding the project scope by an additional $1.2 million if things went smoothly in the first quarter. Meanwhile, the fallout began. I didn't take any joy in it, but I also didn't pretend to be surprised when HR reached out to inform me that Ava had been put on probation. Neil, the junior analyst who had lifted parts of my work into the final document, was reassigned to a different team and removed from all leadership track training programs. and Martin, the department head who greenlit everything, was quietly transitioned out. No announcement, no party. One day he was there, the next he wasn't. There was no ceremony in any of it, but I didn't need one. The most powerful moment had already happened when the company finally saw me not as a cog in the wheel, but as the one who had built the machine in the first place. Stratusmed signed the deal, and our company's PR team made sure to share the win across social platforms. Guess whose name was front and center on the press release? Mine. Suddenly, coworkers who had ignored me in the kitchen were now asking to shadow my calls. Managers who had never learned my name were now tagging me in strategy discussions. It would have been easy to let the attention inflate me, but I stayed grounded. I remembered the silence. I remembered the deletion. And I remembered how close I came to walking away before that call from Jeremy came in. 3 weeks later, I was invited to speak on a leadership panel at a regional business conference. The topic? Claiming your voice, leading through undermining. I said yes. I stood on that stage in front of 300 professionals, and I told my story, not out of bitterness, but as a lesson in resilience. I shared how easy it is for people to silence others when it serves their ambition. And I shared how vital it is to keep records, stay focused, and never surrender your name in a room where you built the table. The applause at the end felt good. Not because I needed validation, but because I knew someone in that audience was sitting through what I'd just survived. And they needed to hear that survival was possible. Back at work, life didn't magically become perfect. There were still challenges, politics, and pressure. But now, when I walked into meetings, I wasn't invisible. I was the lead. The decision maker. The one they came to for clarity. The irony? Many of the same people who once erased me now depended on me for direction. But I didn't become bitter. I became better. Sharper. More intentional. I even took time to mentor 2 junior team members who reminded me of myself when I was just starting out, eager, smart, and quietly capable. I showed them what no one showed me: how to protect your work, advocate for your credit, and stand your ground when it matters most. Because that's what leadership really is. Not titles. Not corner offices. It's making sure the next person doesn't have to fight as hard as you did just to be seen. Looking back, I still remember the moment I saw my name missing from the final proposal. It wasn't just a document, it was a symbol of how disposable people think you are when they believe you won't fight back. But they were wrong. I didn't just fight back, I changed the entire trajectory of that deal, of my career, and of the culture around me. In those quiet early mornings and late nights, when I questioned if it was worth speaking up, the answer was always the same: if I don't, who will? People often think injustice happens in dramatic moments, but the truth is, it usually starts quietly. A name missing. A meeting you're left out of. A credit line that goes to someone else. And if you don't catch it early, if you don't call it out, it becomes the story they write without you. But I didn't let that happen. Instead, I chose to own my voice. I chose to step into discomfort, challenge the narrative, and let the truth speak louder than the whispers that had tried to shut me out. What happened next wasn't just about me getting recognition. It was about setting a precedent. Everyone in that office saw what happened when someone tried to erase the wrong person. And they'll think twice before doing it again. I became more than a name on a proposal. I became the voice behind the project, the face of the win, and the reminder that no matter how much they try to erase you, real value speaks for itself. Sometimes, it just takes one client, one voice, or one moment to flip the entire story. And this time, that moment belonged to me. The moment I opened the email and realized my name wasn't on the final $6.5 million proposal, I felt the ground shift beneath me. I had poured half a year of my life into that project. Early mornings, sleepless nights, dozens of client calls, hundreds of edits, I lived and breathed that proposal. It was more than work to me. It was personal. But somehow, in the version the team sent to the client, my contributions were invisible. No mention. Not even a footnote. Just silence. When I confronted Martin, our team lead, he barely looked up from his laptop. "We thought it would be simpler this way. You're more of a support person anyway," he said casually, like it wasn't my blood, sweat, and expertise that had crafted the backbone of that entire strategy. Support? I was the architect of the entire financial structure. I ran simulations, negotiated terms with suppliers, handled all the logistics with the client's procurement team, and yet here I was, being sidelined without even the courtesy of a conversation. I walked back to my desk in a daze, replaying every meeting, every document, every late-night fix I had made. I wasn't angry yet. I was too stunned. But when the anger came, it was white-hot. I didn't yell. I didn't slam any doors. But I started compiling. Every message. Every revision. Every decision I led. My digital paper trail was impeccable, and I made sure it was organized and time-stamped. If they were going to erase me, they were going to regret it. 3 days later, the client requested a final walkthrough presentation before signing. I wasn't invited. Martin and 2 others prepped the slides, rehearsed in the conference room, and made smug jokes just loud enough for me to hear. "Let's just hope she doesn't barge in," one whispered. They didn't know I'd already spoken to the client weeks before, establishing rapport, answering technical questions, easing their worries. I knew what they valued. And I had a gut feeling they hadn't forgotten me. The presentation day arrived, and I waited. Not at the table, not on the call, but I was watching from a side screen. The team started confidently. Buzzwords. Pie charts. Overpromises. And then the client's lead rep, Mr. Langford, leaned forward. "Sorry to interrupt. Where's Sarah?" Martin blinked. "Sarah?" "Yes. The analyst who walked us through the operational risk model. The one who understood the regional supply chain better than any of us." "Is she no longer with your team?" Silence. She's on other projects now," Martin stammered. Langford didn't smile. "That's unfortunate. She was the reason we felt confident moving forward. We'd like her in the room." Martin fumbled for excuses, but it was too late. I got the call 5 minutes later. "Sarah, can you join us in conference, eh?" I walked in calmly, but inside, I was trembling. This was my moment. I greeted the client, nodded at my stunned team, and took control of the room. I answered Langford's concerns, corrected a few technical inaccuracies the others had made, and when we concluded, he smiled. "Now we're back on track." The contract was signed that afternoon. But Langford had one last condition: we want Sarah as our point of contact going forward. Martin couldn't argue. That night, my inbox exploded with congratulations from leadership, from departments who hadn't even been involved, and from clients on adjacent projects. But I didn't forget the silence from my own team. No apology. No explanation. So I sent an email. A simple one. With receipts. I CC'd HR and our regional director, attaching every document showing my role and impact. Then I wrote, "Just for the record, here's what support looks like." The fallout was swift. Martin was placed under review. The others who had backed the exclusion suddenly wanted to be friendly. I remained polite but distant. A week later, I was invited to present the same proposal at a global leadership summit. Not Martin. Not the rest. Just me. As I stood on that stage, recounting our $6.5 million turnaround, I realized something. They tried to erase me from the story. But they forgot, I was the one who wrote it. And no one forgets the author. The moment I opened the email and realized my name wasn't on the final $6.5 million proposal, I felt the ground shift beneath me. I had poured half a year of my life into that project. Early mornings, sleepless nights, dozens of client calls, hundreds of edits, I lived and breathed that proposal. It was more than work to me. It was personal. But somehow, in the version the team sent to the client, my contributions were invisible. No mention. Not even a footnote. Just silence. When I confronted Martin, our team lead, he barely looked up from his laptop. We thought it would be simpler this way. You're more of a support person anyway, he said casually, like it wasn't my blood, sweat, and expertise that had crafted the backbone of that entire strategy. Support? I was the architect of the entire financial structure. I ran simulations, negotiated terms with suppliers, handled all the logistics with the client's procurement team, and yet here I was, being sidelined without even the courtesy of a conversation. I walked back to my desk in a daze, replaying every meeting, every document, every late-night fix I had made. I wasn't angry yet. I was too stunned. But when the anger came, it was white-hot. I didn't yell. I didn't slam any doors. But I started compiling. Every message. Every revision. Every decision I led. My digital paper trail was impeccable, and I made sure it was organized and time-stamped. If they were going to erase me, they were going to regret it. 3 days later, the client requested a final walkthrough presentation before signing. I wasn't invited. Martin and 2 others prepped the slides, rehearsed in the conference room, and made smug jokes just loud enough for me to hear. "Let's just hope she doesn't barge in," one whispered. They didn't know I'd already spoken to the client weeks before, establishing rapport, answering technical questions, easing their worries. I knew what they valued. And I had a gut feeling they hadn't forgotten me. The presentation day arrived, and I waited. Not at the table, not on the call, but I was watching from a side screen. The team started confidently. Buzzwords. Pie charts. Overpromises. And then the client's lead rep, Mr. Langford, leaned forward. "Sorry to interrupt. Where's Sarah?" Martin blinked. "Sarah?" "Yes. The analyst who walked us through the operational risk model. The one who understood the regional supply chain better than any of us." "Is she no longer with your team?" Silence. She's on other projects now," Martin stammered. Langford didn't smile. "That's unfortunate. She was the reason we felt confident moving forward. We'd like her in the room." Martin fumbled for excuses, but it was too late. I got the call 5 minutes later. "Sarah, can you join us in conference A?"